I went to the grocery store last Tuesday. I needed ground beef, a dozen eggs, orange juice, bread, and cheese. 5 items. Stuff my mom used to call the basics. I stood at the self-checkout, scanned everything, looked at the screen, and the total was $47. I remember buying the same 5 items 2 years ago for about $28. Same store, same brands, same basket. $19 more for the same Tuesday night dinner. That's roughly $76 more per month. Over $900 a year, just on the basics. And here's what got me. My paycheck this year is almost exactly the same as it was last year. I got a 3% raise. Sounds nice on paper, but when ground beef is up almost 14%, orange juice is up 28%, and the USDA just projected food prices overall climbing another 3.1% in 2026, my 3% raise didn't even cover the groceries. I actually have less buying power now than I did 12 months ago, even though the number on my check went up. If that math hits you somewhere uncomfortable, you're not alone. My name is Tom. I'm not an economist. I'm a guy who spent 10 years clawing his way to financial independence by learning the rules of money the hard way. And what I'm seeing in 2026 worries me. Not because the sky is falling, but because the ground is shifting underneath millions of people, and most of them don't feel it until it's too late. Hit subscribe if you want someone who breaks this stuff down without the jargon. Today I'm going to explain what's actually making everything more expensive, why your raise isn't keeping up, and what you can do about it right now with the hand you've been dealt. The government says inflation is 2.4%. That's the January 2026 number from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Sounds manageable. Sounds like the crisis is over. But inflation is an average, and averages lie. It's like saying the average temperature in a hospital is 72 degrees. Technically true, but the guy in the burn unit is at 104, and the body in the morgue is at 55. The average tells you nothing about what's actually happening in the rooms. The rooms where you spend your money look nothing like 2.4%. Beef is up 15% year over year. Orange juice has jumped over 28% since late 2024. Restaurants are projected to climb 3.7% this year, so that $15 Chipotle bowl is on its way to $16 and change. The median rent in this country is now above $1,400. And in any major metro, you know that number is a fantasy. In San Jose, the average renter pays $2,400 a month. Everything that's a fixed monthly cost, your car insurance, your health insurance, your internet bill, has been quietly ticking higher while the headline number says 2.4%. I call this stealth inflation. The official number is low enough that nobody panics, but the actual cost of being alive in America in 2026 is significantly higher than it was even 18 months ago. There are 3 forces pushing your cost of living up at the same time. None of them show up clearly in that one inflation number. The first force is what I call the tariff tax. Over the past year, the US has imposed significant tariffs on goods from China, Canada, Mexico, the EU, and other trading partners. The Tax Foundation estimates that the average American household is paying roughly $1,300 more per year because of these tariffs. Now, the word tariff sounds like something that happens on a cargo ship in the Pacific Ocean. But a tariff is just a tax on imported goods. And who pays that tax? You do. When the tariff makes steel 25% more expensive, the American company that buys that steel raises the price of the dishwasher. When lumber tariffs go up, the cost of building a house goes up. IKEA said publicly that they have to pass costs to customers. It's not abstract, it's your receipt. Yale's Budget Lab estimates that apparel and leather goods could see prices jump 20% or higher in the short run. Electrical equipment up 18%. And here's the part that makes me lose sleep. Tariffs are regressive. They hit lower-income households harder because those households spend a bigger percentage of their income on physical stuff: food, clothes, appliances. The Tax Policy Center calculated that households in the bottom 20% of income get hit proportionally harder than those at the top. The people with the least money pay the most. That's how this works.
The second force is the sticky price problem. During the pandemic, prices surged across the board.
Supply chains broke, stimulus money flooded the system, companies raised prices. All of that made sense at the time, but here's what happened next. Supply chains recovered, stimulus ended, and prices didn't come back down. They just stopped going up as fast. That's what they call disinflation. Not prices falling, just prices rising more slowly. Your rent went from $1,200 to $1,800 between 2020 and 2023. Disinflation means it went from $1,800 to $1,850 this year instead of $1,900. Congrats, you're still paying $1,850. The damage is baked in. In service prices, things like haircuts and car repairs and dental visits have literally never gone down as a category in the last 40 years. Not once. They only go up. When your mechanic charges $150 an hour instead of $120, that $150 is the new forever price. The cumulative damage since 2020 is where the real story lives. Overall consumer prices are up about 22% since early 2020. That means a dollar from 5 years ago buys you about 78 cents worth of stuff today. Your savings didn't shrink in the account, they shrank in what they can buy. The third force is the wage price gap. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that real average hourly earnings, wages adjusted for inflation, grew just 1.2% from January 2025 to January 2026. Technically positive, but barely above zero, and it comes after years where real wages were actually negative. Here's the bigger picture that nobody puts on a graph for you. If wages had kept pace with productivity since 1979, the median worker today would be making about $36 an hour instead of $26. That's roughly $22,000 a year that went somewhere, but not into your paycheck. That gap went to corporate profits, shareholders, and executives. This isn't conspiracy theory. It's publicly available labor data, and it's been consistent for 45 years. So you have prices that went up 22% in 5 years, wages that barely moved in real terms, and new tariff costs layering on top. That's the squeeze. That's why your life feels more expensive, even when the government says inflation is under control. You can't vote these forces away, but you can reposition yourself around them. That starts with 5 concrete moves. Move 1. Audit the bleed. Go through your bank and credit card statements from the last 3 months and find every single recurring charge that has crept up without your permission. Your streaming services have gone up. Your phone plan has gone up. Subscriptions you forgot about are still running. I did this exercise myself in January and found $214 a month in charges that had either silently increased or that I was no longer using. That's $2,568 a year. In an environment where every dollar is worth less, letting dollars leak out unnoticed is like having a hole in the bottom of a bucket while it's raining. This isn't budgeting, it's plugging leaks someone else opened in your bucket. Move 2. Restructure your income. Your 3% raise is not going to save you. The data is clear. When beef is running at 15% and shelter is at 3%, and tariffs are adding $1,300 a year, you're treading water at best. The highest return thing most Americans can do right now is not a side hustle. It's a career-level move. AI and technical roles are booming in 2026. Cybersecurity, data analysis, cloud architecture, AI engineering, these are fields where demand is up 25 to 32% year over year, and salaries sit between $110,000 and $220,000. You don't need a 4-year degree for many of them. Google, IBM, and Microsoft offer professional certificates that take 3 to 6 months. If you're in a field where wages are flat, the math says invest 5 to 10 hours a week in learning a skill that's in demand, not as a side hustle, as a career bridge. The difference between a $50,000 salary and an $80,000 salary over 10 years, invested, is roughly $400,000. That's not a raise, that's a life-altering trajectory change. A $20,000 raise beats a $200 side hustle every single time. Move 3. Make your money fight the inflation for you. Every dollar sitting in a regular checking account is losing purchasing power every single month. Cash in 2026 is a melting ice cube. The long-term average return of the US stock market is about 10% per year. The last 2 years were well above that, but don't treat those as normal. What matters is the long-run math. If your money is sitting in a savings account earning 4% and real inflation in your life is running at 3 to 5%, your savings are growing at maybe 1% in real terms, barely staying alive.
Open a brokerage account if you haven't. Put money into a broad market index fund. Set up an automatic contribution, even if it's $100 a month. $100 a month at 10% average returns over 20 years is roughly $76,000. At 30 years, it's about $226,000. That's the cost of doing nothing versus doing something small but consistent. And if you have a 401k match at work that you're not maxing out, that's the first dollars you invest. A 100% employer match is a guaranteed 100% return on day one. Nothing beats free money. Cash is a melting ice cube. Assets are the freezer. Move 4. Restructure your biggest costs, not your smallest ones. People try to fight inflation by cutting the $5 coffee. That's $150 a month max. Meanwhile, their rent is $1,800 and their car payment is $600. The 3 biggest costs in most American budgets are housing, transportation, and food. If you can move the needle on any of those 3 by even 15%, the impact dwarfs every coupon you'll ever clip. Can you refinance? Can you get a roommate? The remote work revolution made geographic arbitrage real. If you can earn a San Francisco salary while living in Boise or Raleigh or San Antonio, you just gave yourself a 40% raise without your employer paying a penny more. Can you drop a car? In households with 2 car payments, eliminating one payment plus insurance plus gas plus maintenance can free up $700 to $1,000 a month. Over 20 years at 10% returns, that car payment is worth $600,000 to $860,000 in an index fund. You're not giving up a car, you're buying your freedom. Move the $1,800 rent or the $600 car before you worry about the $5 coffee. Move 5. Build income your employer doesn't control. Everything I just described, the tariffs, the sticky prices, the wage gap, they all share one common trait. You have zero control over them. You can't set the price of beef. You can't negotiate the tariff rate. You can't force your employer to give you a raise that matches real inflation. The only variable you fully control is whether you have income sources outside of your paycheck. This doesn't mean starting a dropshipping store at midnight. I made a whole video about why bad side hustles make you poorer. This means building something where the relationship between your time and your income is not a straight line. A skill you can freelance, a digital product you build once and sell repeatedly, consulting in your area of expertise at rates 2 to 3 times your hourly salary. Even $1,000 a month from an independent source changes your entire financial physics. That's $12,000 a year of inflation-resistant income. Invested at 10% returns, that becomes $760,000 in 20 years. That single stream, grown and invested, can fund an entire retirement. Even $1,000 a month that your employer doesn't control changes the physics of your life. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. The financial reality in America in February 2026 is that the average person is being squeezed from 3 directions at once. Prices are up and staying up. Wages are growing slower than the things you need to buy. And new policy costs like tariffs are adding hundreds of dollars a year to your household expenses. But every economic squeeze in history has produced 2 groups of people. The group that got squeezed and stayed squeezed. And the group that looked at the pressure, understood the forces, and repositioned. They moved their money. They upgraded their skills. They cut the hidden bleed. They built income outside the system that was squeezing them. You're watching this video, which means you're already in the second group. You just need to act on it. Tell me in the comments which of the 5 moves you're going to start with this week. Hit subscribe because I put out a new video every week that breaks down the financial forces most people don't see until it's too late. And if you want to understand the deeper trap that keeps the middle class stuck, even when they're doing everything right, watch this video right here. I'll see you in the next one.